Hi, friends. For those who are watching at home, we are grateful that you are able to stick with us today for our 2021 annual church conference. We begin with a prayer. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we ask you into this space. Remind us of who we are and whose we are. As we do your business, give us wisdom and graciousness that we might find our way forward to be the people you are calling us to be. Remind us of our mission, remind us of our vision, and remind us of who you have called us to be. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Friends, there is information about the church conference that's available on our website right now. You can click right from the homepage on the Asbury First Church Conference information. It includes the agenda, it includes the annual report, it includes the budget, it includes the nominations report, and it also includes some pictures and bios of those people we have put forward as nominees for our first governing board. The most important thing at the beginning here for me to recognize is that we are using a service that we used in December. It worked pretty well, though not perfectly. We're going to try our best today. So if you can go to slido.org, slido.com, slido.com, and enter the code #Asbury. You can see it right on your screen right now. So I'd ask that you use that and find your way using a device. If there are multiple voting members of your household, you may want to use multiple devices when you get to this place, or pause and maybe use different browsers. We recognize it's not ideal, and I guess I want to just name that up front. Look, it would be much easier and much better and would be a lot less work if we could all just be here and raise our hands and vote, or, check off boxes on a piece of paper. As you know, this year has been about trying to figure out ways to make a really hard situation a little bit better. We appreciate your patience and your grace. We recognize it's not ideal, and we are doing our very best to make it work. I want to say a special thank you up front to Deb Bullock-Smith, who is here to make sure that I am keeping in line, who is helping to make sure that Slido is working properly. I want to say thank you to Sarah Brubaker, who has helped put together almost everything you see, our illustrious communication coordinator, and all of those in the booth and on the tech team who have helped make this day possible. Truly, truly, it is so much work, and there is so much that has happened to make this a reality. So thank you to the staff, thank you to the volunteers, and thank you to everyone who's helped make this possible. So if you are on Slido, and if you're able to go to slido.com, or you can click with your phone on the QR code that you see on our screen, it will take you to a box that at the top will say Q&A and another tab that says polls. The polls will be for voting, and while we're going to open the polls now, what we'd ask is respectfully that you just wait, because we recognize some people might just need to go, but we'd ask that you maybe wait until we're able to give you the information that we think would be helpful to you. But if the Q&A section, if you have questions that you'd like to ask throughout, then please write those in so that we can do our very best to answer them. I'm going to answer them at the end, and we're going to open the voting portion at the end. Here's one thing that we learned in December. There is a delay between right now when I'm speaking and right now when you're hearing, whenever that is. So here is my watch. It says right now it is 12:07 and 15 seconds. Now, that's not set to anything, magical, but so that's what it is on my watch. We've learned that even Deb, he's right here, but watching on the live stream, has a 45-second delay. So if at some point you got up to use the restroom or something during the service, if you pause, I would ask that you just click on the live button to make sure that you are as live as can be. Pinch yourself, make sure, but it's 45 seconds to 2 minutes could be the delay. So when we get to the voting portion, I'm going to set a time at which I'm going to close the voting so we know when it can actually close. If that makes sense, it's perhaps the only way that we can think about trying to do this. Again, it's not ideal, but we will do our very best. Also, I will just name that because this is a virtual church conference, there is no provision for it in the discipline. What our plan is, as I announced last December, is that whatever votes we take in this capacity, we will ratify when we are able to be together again. While we will function as though that this is the way we've moved forward, as has been recommended by the Council of Bishops, by our own bishop, and by our district superintendent, because there's no actual provision for it in the discipline, we are just going to operate on faith a little bit here and recognize that there may come a time when we're back together that we will ratify all of the decisions that we've made in these church conferences at the time, whenever that happens to be. With that said, we now move into the business of the church conference. The first item is a recommendation for candidates of ministry, and we have one candidate for ministry that we're putting forward today, Mike Mullen, who is currently serving as our Minister for Youth and Discipleship. Mike was removed from the process of candidacy earlier this year, and we have decided to re-recommend him for ministry. So if you support Mike in his candidacy for ministry, I ask that when we get to the voting portion, that you confirm and affirm that within your voting. Second, next item of business is our financial report, and you will hear from Al Sweat, who had pre-recorded a presentation as the chair of finance. I turn it over to Al at this time.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Sweat, and I'm chairman of Finance Committee, and I'm here to spend a few moments talking to you about 2020 results and the budget for 2021, and to propose a agreement among the church to approve the budget of 2021. So with that, let me talk about a few highlights from this past year and our plans and assumptions going forward. I think it's fair to say that 2020 was an unexpected year in so many ways. We started the year in a perfectly ordinary sense, and then the pandemic hit, and at that point, all bets were off in how the year was going to proceed. So there was quite a bit of discussion as the pandemic impact was starting to be felt, and several of us got together to start to think about what the possible scenarios were. And we went anywhere from thinking things were going to be just terrible to thinking they were just going to be bad. And it was in that context that we were trying to think about how to manage through to the end of the year. Well, it turns out that the news is far more good than bad, and so we're very pleased about that. And in the response from the church and from the membership of the church was, first of all, to manage expenses, but also from the membership standpoint, to continue with the very generous giving. And so this allowed the church to wind up 2020 in a very favorable position, very unexpectedly. So in fact, income was slightly less than budget, which is to be expected, but at the same time, expenses were significantly less than budget. So expenses were almost $100,000 less than budget, and that included some additional gifts. So we had the extra money necessary to keep the live streaming going, and there was a special outreach request for that. There was also additional money that came in, much of it from foundations, which is a new and generally targeted source of funding that passes through the pastoral fund and is used to distribute to the community for those people who are seriously in need. So the church was able to provide for those needs even in an unexpected situation as 2020 showed us. So in general, what we did, if you look at the church budget in two categories, one is the ordinary operating plan, and the other is designated giving, gifts which are given specifically for particular purposes. As you can see on this chart, we ended $26,000 positive. In other words, we took in $26,000 more than we spent for the year in our general operating budget. And from a designated standpoint, we did spend a little more than expected, but that's because that budget those funds tend to go up and down from year to year as they are donated and consumed. So there are some timing differences sometimes in how the money is received and spent. What that meant was that we ended the year with a $26,000 to the plus on the budget side. And on the next chart, you'll see a pie chart and some specific numbers that tell you how much those amounts were. A couple of things I'd like to highlight here is one of them is how, in fact, the pledge and donations from the members generally stayed at the level that had been committed earlier in the year, and for that we are very grateful and appreciate the members of the community staying the course and helping the church continue its operations, which interestingly in a pandemic or when it's closed down, things still have to go on, and in some cases are even more difficult than they would be in normal operations. So it still keeps money to be able to continue with the mission of the church and keep the church operating. So we're very grateful that pledges and gifts were what they were. And so thank you for that. Looking at it from a mission standpoint, the church is here for a particular purpose, and you can see on the next chart how the allocation across the various mission components break down. And each of these segments on the pie chart, with the exception of the conference ministry share, is a combination of staffing and facilities, general allocations across that. But you can think in terms of ministerial assignments here. So congregational care, Kathy is certainly leading that activity, discipleship and youth with Mike, outreach with Jackie, worship and arts with Stephen, and all the people who make the music program what it is and what we all appreciate. But generally also, of course, all the ministers work in all the areas, and so this is an allocation to show you that the church is in fact predominantly focused on all the things that we would want it to be. And also you could look at the conference ministry shares primarily outreach. So if you combine ministry share and outreach, that's close to 35% of the church's spending, which goes to outreach in one form or another. So looking forward to 2021, a few assumptions. First of all, the plan was to stay with the spending and the income expectations from 2020, the actual, not the original budget. Also, we wanted to continue to align the budget with the mission, vision, ministry areas, and so on, the things that are important to the church. And we are assuming, just for planning purposes, this may not actually happen this way, we're assuming that the church will still be closed for the first part of the year, operating the way, not closed, that's the wrong way to put it, partially open. So in other words, the campus will not be as active as it normally is. People will continue to do their work remotely, and Sunday services will be live streamed. If we can reconvene sooner than that, so much the better. A little bit of increase around wages and salaries and benefits for equity reasons, and there is enough built into the plan to hire a portion of a person to help in the budgeting and the finance management of the church and help Dick Moncrief with his superb work. A couple of challenges going forward into 2021. We have a loss of a major tenant, Epilepsy Prelude, and we'd be surprised if somebody else would take that space, so we just had to factor in that revenue loss. There's an increase in the conference ministry share. That's not entirely unexpected, but is something just to be called out. And again, continuing to build a budget for uncertain times. So the 2021 budget, you'll see if you compare the 2021 budget to the 2020, they're very similar. The total revenue or income is 2139 as compared with 2094, so that's roughly, it's within 1% from one year to the next. So again, staying the course and not expecting an increase in income with the allocations that you can see on this chart. And then from a mission view, very similar to the allocations for this year, a couple of percentage points up and down here and there just as a function of how the actual numbers, when you get down to calculating them, in detail. Sometimes some assumptions shift around a little bit, but generally speaking, the two pie charts are very similar. So the church is able to stay on course with its allocations and its mission work from 2020, and then we'll see what happens after 2021, hopefully when things are more back to normal. So if you have any questions about this, David Strong, who is the keeper of the budget and all the financial information, certainly is happy to field any questions going forward. And in just a moment, I will ask for a vote, if you will, or for approval for this. But before I do that, a quick summary. 2020 went unexpectedly well because income declined less than spending. And the 2021 budget is very close to 2020, so holding the line, keeping things flat, and making some rational assumptions about what to expect in this year. And most importantly, from a discipline standpoint, the budget balances. So income and expenses are exactly in balance, which is what we need to do and what we, of course, should do from a prudent management standpoint. So with that, I'd like to say a couple of thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank David Strong and Richard Moncrief for pulling everything together and making the numbers balance and doing all the necessary work to be able to present to you the messages from today. And obviously, I'd like to thank Stephen, who is, among all of us, is most knowledgeable about the practical aspects of church finances, but also helps keep us stay the course, reminding us that it's the mission we're here for, not just managing the finances. And so I appreciate somebody helping keep us on task, but appropriately focused on why the church is here. And then finally, I'd like to give a special shout out to Dave Kennedy. Dave, he's the guy who has been, as a volunteer, has been helping to figure out how the new software works, figuring out how to allocate, how to report the budget, how to think about what the chart of accounts should look like, doing the analysis behind the scenes, helping us all understand what the meaning of the numbers is. And we really appreciate what Dave has done this year, and it's been a lot of fun to work with him and see him do his thing. So with that, let me now say these words. I formally put forward the 2021 budget for approval by the congregation. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much to Al Sweat. I echo all of the sentiments that he shared in terms of the thanks to Dave Kennedy for all of his hard work in helping to pull together the numbers, to Dick Moncrief, to David Strong, and to all. Al has been serving as our chair of Finance Committee for the last 3 years, and I'm deeply grateful for the way in which he has done that with faith and grace. As you can see, this has been a strange year. I want to thank the staff, especially for all of the ways that we froze things that we needed to when March came around and we suddenly recognized that we needed to be as careful as possible. We always try to be good stewards of the gifts and the resources with which we've been entrusted. This year, though, we recognized that it was a special circumstances meant that we had to be really, really thoughtful before we did anything to make sure that it was in keeping and mission related for that moment. So thank you so much for that. Next, so in a moment, we'll open up the voting is technically open, but I'd ask that we just wait for a second to vote. For the nominations report, you'll see that on the website. Hopefully you can download that. In particular, I put on there the slate of nominees for our new governing board. We voted on this new governance model in December. We voted to approve it, and we have put forward a slate. We have done our very best to balance the slate as well of the governing board as well as the 6 committees of the board. I do want to say this. The nominations report in terms of the teams is not exhaustive. So if there's a group that you think, why isn't that on there? And did you just get rid of it? The answer is no, we didn't get rid of it. Just we may not have received a report. We might be waiting for a couple of things to fall into place before we put out the slate of who's going to be on there. And the teams, by their very nature, are going to be a little more fluid than those committees that are there. So if your group, the one that you care most about, is not represented in the nominations report, please know that it is not meant as an affront. It is simply that we're waiting to get some more information in place, or maybe it's not the kind of thing that we would normally put into the nominations report. This year was a very hard year to try and put this together, as everything was being invented new and we couldn't see anyone. So it's one of those times when we're just trying to find our way and doing the best we can. You'll also notice that in the report, unlike previous years, we have not put any email addresses in there, and there's a reason for that, because as too many have experienced, we have been the victim of several phishing scams. That is, when somebody purports to be you or someone else in the congregation and sends an email, it typically starts like, hey, give me, I need you to respond to me quickly. They do it from pretending to be me all the time. It's very frustrating. And then they try to get people to buy gift cards or things like that. So we made the decision not to put email addresses in that. I will just say a couple of things about the nominations report. Every chair of the committee, the current chairs of those committees, which will continue in some form or another, Finance, SPRC, which is now PPR, Pastor Parish Relations Committee as opposed to Staff Parish Relations Committee, the nominations, the church, the governing board. There was a church council before. In almost every case, we've had the previous chair stay on as a member of that committee to offer some kind of transition, to offer some kind of example. So, for example, we just had Al Sweat report on the finance. He has been the finance chair graciously for 3 years. He's going to remain on the finance committee while Angie Birch steps into the leadership role for that committee. There are some where we didn't have a previous committee. The Outreach Center would be an example. What we did our best is to try and find people who had served in leadership roles in some of those previous ministries so that we could have those represented. Our hope is that this represents a swath of members of the congregation who are both new to the congregation and those who are longer-term members of the congregation. We tried our very best for balance in as many ways as we could, and I think it's a really great slate of people that have come forward. It is not complete in the sense that the committees and the governing board is complete, but the teams, there is opportunity for anyone out there to be involved within the life of the church, and I hope that you will take the opportunity to be involved. And if you're thinking, there's something I'd like to do, please know that we would love to know. I would love to know, so don't hesitate to reach out and to let us know. With that said, I'm putting forward the nominations report officially. My discipline, I am the chair of the nominations committee, so I put that forward. I will answer some questions before we move into a formal time of voting. Okay, one question. Will it be likely that the conference ministerial board will accept him, I assume Mike, if we do recommend him? What about the doctrinal issues he has with him? I do think that it is unlikely that the board, the District Committee on Ministry, will recommend sending Mike forward. But one of the advantages of us approving Mike in this moment is that it allows him a chance to actually meet with the board, which they did not allow before discontinuing him. There are some doctrinal challenges, but I don't think they're unique. I think if he were to be before another annual conference or another district committee, he would have been allowed to move forward. So sometimes it is a symptom of where we happen to be going through the candidacy process. Second, when will we go back to in-person worship? Oh my goodness, not soon enough. I am so ready. Now, I have been watching the numbers and recognizing that they're starting to tick down. I pray that that trajectory continues, and we will continue to do our best in the leadership of the church, along with our COVID-19 response task force, to figure out how and when we can reopen safely. I've said before, and I'll say again, I'm imagining that the first step will be something like a hybrid opportunity for us to come in, where perhaps we start with an early service in person and we continue with the 11 o'clock service all virtual. We will see. Don't quote me on that quite yet, but we're going to do our very best to get people back as soon as possible. Because maybe more than me, but I have to say I cannot wait. I am really, really done of preaching into a camera. How much of the conference share is spent on conference administrative costs? I assume that's the conference ministry shares. I don't have the conference budget right in front of me, but some. I would be making up a number if I told you. I can work out that to give you that directly. So, but I don't have that directly in front of me, but there are administrative costs in the conference. In theory, and hopefully, it is all missionally related as well, right? So the administrative costs of the conference is there to support the local churches in their mission and ministry. And that takes having some conference staff and other people in place, just like at church. In order for our mission, our local church, in order for mission and ministry to happen, we need people in place to help facilitate that. We can make arguments about who is necessary on the conference level and who is not, but we approve that at the annual conference that we don't have a whole lot of control over, though we do send our delegates to annual conference to vote either to approve or not approve of the budget. The finance presentation doesn't tell us what we're spending the money on. How much of the 21 plan is for conference facilities and staffing? So it does tell us that in that each of the annual conference, each of the pieces of that pie chart, whether it's the congregational care, whether it's worship and arts, includes within them a breakdown of each includes personnel, administrative costs, all broken down into those mission and ministry. So just as I was explaining with the conference, when somebody in other words, my job is not just to be a person here or to have somebody sitting in a desk. Every single person who's here at Asbury First is on staff at Asbury First is a part of the mission and ministry of the church. So the number for worship and the arts, the number for congregational care, the number for outreach, the number for youth and discipleship all include the personnel built in. And we can provide the deeper numbers for those who are interested. And we gave you the mechanism to do that by emailing David Strong, or dstrong@asburyfirst.org. We're happy to share any of those that people might have. From Patrick Fulford. In the 2021 budget, have we used up the 26,000 surplus? Also, does the 26,000 surplus also our cumulative surplus for all prior years? Does that represent the surplus from all our cumulative years? Got it. So one of the things that we did last year when we worked through the chart of accounts was try and get ourselves back to even. What we discovered is that we had, in the previous year, run a deficit. So there was a 46,000. I'm speaking from memory here. So before you quote me on that numbers, as I remember it, and I know someone like Dave Kennedy or Al Sweat or David Strong can help me out here, but I believe we were running after we worked through the chart of accounts and designated everything to the appropriate place, that we had a $46,000 deficit that we had run the previous year, the cumulative over several years before. And so we've balanced that out in the new budget. The 26,000 represents last year's surplus only, 2020's surplus, that we've used then to help balance the ongoing budget into 2021. So that is, it's used in the 2021 budget. I mean, the truth is, the only way we were able to make the 2021 budget work was by being really, really careful and cutting some things that we normally do, recognizing that we might not be able to do them anyway. But that means that next year, as we head into the 2022 budget, we're going to have to be very thoughtful about recognizing that we can't keep the budget flat. We're going to have to add some things back in as we get there. I want to see if I have any other questions. I don't see any other questions coming in, though I recognize the delay. So here's what I'm going to do. Right now, my watch says it is 12:30 and 30 seconds. I'm going to open up voting, and I'm going to close voting at 12:42. I'm not sure when you receive this, but we're opening up voting, and at 12:42 we will close voting. That should even everybody out, so please start voting now. We will not put up because there are individual names that we'll be voting upon, and we can't figure out how to show just one piece of the results without showing all of the results, and we recognize that we don't usually show if somebody is voted against. We're going to just report the numbers, and we'll have a place on our website where we'll put up the actual numbers without the individual people who were voted against or voted for, if that makes sense. We're just trying to find a way to do this in a way that's equitable. I'm going to continue to answer some questions that come in, but recognizing that voting is open until 12:42. 12:42, voting is open. How much money in income for 2020 came from the payroll protection program? Thanks. I believe the number, we've got some others who are coming in as well. Oh, did that go away? Okay. We did receive money from the payroll protection program. For those who don't know, that was a program that was done by the federal government as a mechanism to help offset some of the costs. It was the reason why, and so I think we applied for that in April, and it ran through June. It was one of the reasons we were able to cover all of the expenses that we had during that time, especially for the extra kinds of pieces that we had to do as a result of the pandemic, and that was there to protect payroll. So we were able to utilize that. What we don't know yet is whether or not all of that is forgiven. So we believe that it is, and we have every reason to believe it is. But as the federal government is still making those determinations, our bank has approved us for that, but we are still waiting to hear back from that. So look for more information, and once we have a fuller report about that, in particular for the payroll protection program, then we will let you know what we know from that and how everything breaks down. Okay. There's just a link. Somebody shared a link to get to all the church conference presentation and finance information that's out there. While we're waiting, I'll just say a few words. One is about how grateful I am to all of you who have been able to remain faithfully with us throughout the course of the last 9 months. 10 months. I've very much missed you. Who knew in March that this would be how we'd be worshiping again in January? And I know, like so many of you, I'm ready to come back. Part of the challenge for us as we're thinking about coming back is just how different things could feel. And I think preparing our hearts and minds for that is going to be important. So a big piece of who we are as a church is about reaching out to one another and about being hospitable to one another in the midst of this. And so coffee hour is an important aspect of who we are, right? The passing of the peace when we stand up and greet one another by name and shake one another's hand. We're not going to be able to do some of those in the same way, at least for a little bit. Our prayer and my recommendation is that everybody gets the vaccine whenever it is available. I think that will help us come into this with a little bit more ease so that we can protect everybody who is here as a part of our congregation. But we recognize that it's going to be a little while before we get back to quote-unquote normal. And the new normal is going to be, just like I said, new. We're going to have to figure it out as we go. But we will continue to do that in the best way that we know how, and to be faithful to the mission as we do so. One question that has come up is when the General Conference will meet. So the General Conference is scheduled to meet at the end of August of this year through the beginning of September for 10 days. I think there is a big question mark about whether or not that is still going to be allowed to happen. I think it may be different. It may have been a different question if it were simply the members of just the United States that was getting together to vote. But you have to remember that basically half and half, half are in the United States and half of our delegates for the General Conference are outside of the United States, and visas and other travel restrictions that are in place due to the pandemic are going to make it particularly hard. I would point out especially that a third of those are from Africa, and right now, as the last report I heard just this week was that Africa has not been receiving vaccinations in the same way that the rest of the world has, which in my mind is a justice issue that all of us ought to work to correct. So the General Conference, it's possible, just to finish my answer to that question, it's possible that it will be delayed. It's possible that it will move to virtual, though even that has some potential equity issues for those who don't have easy access to a broadband or to a mechanism to vote in that way. So we're really looking at it. I'm Fortunately, not having to make those decisions. I have my other decisions to make, but I am a delegate and will continue to keep you informed as soon as I know something further about that. I will just point out that if you have other questions, I should have named this at the beginning. I apologize for not having done so. But if you have other questions that are not getting through, or if you're having trouble with Slido, you can do so by emailing questions@asburyfirst.org. A couple of other things. Stephen, thanks for all you're doing for Asbury First. Thank you. I'm grateful to be here and grateful to all everyone else is doing as well. This is a bizarre moment. Is a directory available? The answer is yes. If you email us or call us, we can have one ready for you. Here's one thing we're hoping in this new year is that we can have access to an online directory so that it's always updated. You'll need to be looking for ways in which you can keep your information safe, and all those pieces we're still working out, so we're not ready to fully announce that yet or flesh it out, but we are excited to be able to put that forward. So many people have posted some links. Where are retired clergy in the new governance? So the same place they were in the previous governance model. Retired clergy are, if they're affiliated, there are plenty of retired clergy that are not affiliated with Asbury First as their church or their charge conference. But for those who are, they would do the same things they did in the past. So you'll notice in our annual report, which we don't have to formally receive, but is present for you. And I do hope that you'll read through the annual report, as there's so much good information about what people have been doing within this congregation to stay faithful and remain working throughout the course of this pandemic. But the retired clergy would still have affiliation. So you'll see in that annual report, for instance, Reverend Dr. Hill, who happens to be my father-in-law, still has Asbury First as his charge conference, though he is not retired. He is in extension ministry, and because this is his charge, he sends in an annual report each year. But all of the retired clergy are welcome to send in their annual report that we would include. I recognize those who don't want to. I don't blame you. Enough reports in the course of a regular ministerial career. Let me see here. Can the video shared in the service be linked in Facebook so our family and friends who may be looking for a way to help in this time of needs? Absolutely. So we will put the video that we shared in the service up on our website, asburyfirst.org/bettertogether. We will also post it in a version of it, a smaller version of it, through our Facebook page, amongst other social media opportunities. And we would encourage you and perhaps ask you, if you're able, to share it with people around the world right now. It is, I know 500,000 is a lot to try and raise together, but it is, seems reasonable, it seems doable, and totally within our reach to be able to do. So we hope that you will consider sharing that with others. And you'll hear in just a moment a report from our church, from the Better Together campaign, to share a little bit about where we are. I have 2 minutes left on my watch. I recognize that you may be hearing this and a little bit later, but as I told you, we're going to close this at 12:42 to make sure that we had allowed plenty of time for voting. And Deb Bullock-Smith, our intrepid caregiver for today, is going to share with us what some of those numbers are once we officially pull it to a close. If there are other questions, I'm happy to continue to answer them to the best of my ability. I tried to update you on various aspects of the life of the church right now in my annual report, which is the first report in that annual report, in the 2021 annual report, or report for the year 2020. So I hope that you'll have a chance to read through those, and I can let you know some of what we've done. And we just have one more minute here, and we will close voting. I'm praying that those who have had questions have had a chance to ask them or have them answered. Again, I recognize this is not the most ideal way of doing something like this. I would much prefer to have it done differently, but this whole year has been about adapting and making the best of hard situations. Since we have a moment, I'll just say I recognize that not everybody grew up in Kansas City, and so not everybody out there is going to be rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs this afternoon. I do know there's another team playing closer to home. I will say that I root for the Bills when they're not playing the Chiefs, but at the end of the day, I think we will all be happy for each other regardless of what happens, and I hope it goes well this afternoon, whatever well looks like for you. With that said, friends, at 12:42, I'm going to call this portion of the polls to a close. If for some reason I'm closing too soon and you are not able to, haven't been able to vote for some reason, please know you can send us an email at questions@asburyfirst.org. And certainly if it turns out that everything is so close that we're going to need those votes, we'll figure out what to do in that case. But I'm looking for... Okay, Mike has been approved as a candidate for ministry. Our budget has been approved at 98%, the nominations at 96%. And yes, the new governing board has been approved. Friends, thank you so much for your faithfulness as we've found our way through. I'm going to officially close this portion of the annual church conference meeting, and then switch to do the final report from the Better Together campaign before closing at the end with prayer. And so in order to just refresh your memory a little bit, we began the Better Together campaign in the fall of 2017. Our first phase was to raise money to help support the infrastructure needs of this building in particular. We had to replace all of the HVAC, all of the electricity in this room to change the lighting, and we were able to accomplish that, the front steps, and so we have a report now from Chuck Hanrahan, who will tell us a little bit about what we were able to accomplish through that.
Hi, this is Chuck Hanrahan with a Better Together building update. The good news is we're just about done with Phase 1, our infrastructure. As a reminder, Phase 1 included the HVAC system, the electrical system, and sanctuary lighting, all here in 1040. I have a full report on our website that goes room by room and talks about everything that we did in each of the spaces. But why don't we take a quick tour? Let's get started. As you may remember, the whole project started because we needed to replace our aging boilers. So it all started right here in the old boiler room. In fact, the boilers failed 6 months before we started our project, but luckily we had a plan and were able to replace those before we started the rest of the project.
We have also installed 3 new air handlers. Previously, they were buried up in the ceiling. Now they are at floor level so that they can have ongoing maintenance.
We also installed new steel entry doors for security. We also have new electrical service to the entire building. This feeds all of the breaker panels throughout 1040. Fellowship Hall, we have a new ceiling, a new lighting, we have a new epoxy floor, and a new kitchen hood, which has fire suppression in it. This is the first time we've had fire suppression in the kitchen, and that's really important. We have fresh paint. We refurbished the existing dishwasher. We cleaned all of the stainless steel countertops and equipment, and we have new fridge and freezer. Here at Fellowship Hall, we've done quite a facelift. I'll start by talking about the new projector and motorized screen. We've moved the entire room presentation 90 degrees so that everyone is actually closer to the screen and the podium that would be placed over here. We've also moved remote microphone connections to this side, so all of the presentation can be done from this orientation. We have new ceilings, new dimmable lighting. We've moved the existing speaker system into the ceiling, and we have fresh paint, really bringing a brightness to the room. We also have partial air conditioning in this room. In addition, we've cleaned and repaired the existing flooring and waxed it. Here in the chancel, we refurbished the organ and we installed new organ screens that were originally planned when the church was built. Let me show you our new lighting control system. You remember the old panel. Here's the new control system that operates everything. Touch screen and preset for each service. We've totally redone the lighting here in the chancel. All of the lighting used to come from the back of these two panels, which are seen from the nave as crosses. We've moved all of the lighting up to the ceiling so that it's less blinding but more illuminating. In the nave, we've retrofitted all of the existing chandeliers and wired them into our new lighting system. And we have air conditioning in the sanctuary. Thank you very much for your support of the Better Together Capitol Building Campaign.
That was the first phase of the campaign. Thank you to Chuck Hanrahan and to all who are part of the building committee who have helped oversee the work that has done. It is so much. And there is just one little bit left to be finished. The Butler's Pantry, the Explorer Scouts have taken on that project and given the nature of the pandemic have had to delay, but we know that that is going to be done soon, and we're grateful to everyone who has helped make that possible. We now turn for a report from the co-chair of the Better Together campaign, Patrick Fulford.
Good afternoon. As you may recall, a key principle of our Better Together campaign is that no project would be started until we had received 100% of the pledges required to complete it. And thankfully, back in 2018, we had already received sufficient pledges to proceed with phase one of our infrastructure work on 1040. And as you've heard from Chuck, this work is completed and fully paid for. All $2.5 million. So we've not had to borrow any funds from our construction line of credit and have therefore saved a lot of interest expense. Currently, we're working to raise funds required for phase two, enabling our outreach center. The total cost for phase two is estimated at $4.5 million, and we have approximately $1 million to go. Phase one and phase two pledges have totaled $6 million. One of the values of our church is generosity, and clearly your giving demonstrates that value. So thank you. I also want to thank our amazing campaign committee, led by Paul Kempfel and myself. These 14 troopers have given their all to this effort and have done an exceptional job in raising that $6 million. Throughout 2020, the campaign committee has focused on foundations as a source of additional funds, and we have had considerable success. So far, we have received gifts from 12 foundations totaling slightly more than $360,000. We also have foundation proposals that have been submitted or are close to being submitted for another 11 foundations, totaling almost $800,000. And there's another 10 foundations that we're evaluating to see if we might be a good fit for them. We don't know how many dollars we'll raise from foundations, but something around $250,000 seems possible with continued hard work and good fortune. In any event, we plan to complete our foundation work by late spring. Beside foundations, our remaining work centers on two areas: a specific You Are Well campaign that I will tell you more about in a few moments, and a final ask of the congregation. Regarding the You Are Well campaign, it will be focused on two groups: younger physicians who were students that worked in our health clinic over the past 10 years, as well as a group of 60 more senior physicians who have a strong relationship with a gentleman named Mac Everts. And they may be interested in making a gift to Asbury First because of Mac. Mac is a former Asbury First member and trustee who also ran the UR Medical Center and Hospital when the health clinic was first started. Mac was instrumental in its establishment. It's difficult to estimate how much we may gain from that effort, but again, we feel that something in the $250,000 range is possible. And to finish the campaign the way it started, we'll make an ask of the congregation. As we do this, we recognize how generous you have been so far. We hope that many of you will be willing to make an additional gift, perhaps adding another year to a multi-year pledge that you've already made. Clearly, there are many new members who have joined the church in the last 3 years, and it will give them a chance to participate in this good work. Many people from all over the world have joined Asbury First since the pandemic, and they're invited to join us as well. You have just been invited. As you have heard earlier, the pandemic has only intensified the need for the services that we will provide in our renovated and accessible outreach center. We need to achieve that $1 million and begin this good work. We will email you a pledge card and other information in the next few days. We thank you for your generous spirit and your prayerful consideration of this request. Good day.
This has been a long process to try and raise the funds for this outreach center. It is a commitment that we are all making to this city. We've already centered outreach, and now it's time to make our outreach center. We have a couple of questions that I want to make sure that we have a chance to answer. One question, how do the total costs for Phase 1 campus infrastructure and the outreach center compare with the dollar amounts originally budgeted? If you'll remember back when we started for Phase 1, when we went to put out the bids for the infrastructure, they came in significantly higher, to the tune of about $500,000 higher than what we had anticipated for just the infrastructure components of the phase, which meant that we were further away from our goal towards the outreach center than we originally thought. That meant that we needed to then check to see our numbers with our architect and with their builders to find out exactly how far away. So there were it was more than we originally thought as well for the outreach center, which you'll notice as the numbers have crept up in order to meet the new budget, to recognize the increased costs associated with the building of this project. Our hope is that we are now at the right number, that we have contingencies built in and we know where we are. It's possible that the numbers could go down. I don't know how likely that is, but we are trying our best to be conservative in our estimation for how much we need in order to make this a reality. So yes, the numbers have changed. I think we could prepare something if it would be helpful to people. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head. I apologize for that. And if Patrick were here or somebody else were physically present, they may be able to answer that better than I can. But certainly we can prepare whatever numbers you might be looking for. But the short answer is, not to sugarcoat it, is this is more expensive than we originally thought it was going to be, no doubt. Most of that is due to the increased building costs. There is some, in terms of the outreach center, there is some scope change that were necessary to meet the needs of the outreach ministries as they've been described and as we've understood them. Let me just see if there are other questions that might have come up. I recognize that people have graciously now given 2 hours of their time. We're right at the 2-hour mark. And so I would just close us with a word of prayer. But before I do, I want to say thank you to everyone who helped make today possible, to Deb Bullock-Smith, who's been at the computer making this possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To everyone in the broadcast room, thank you, thank you, thank you. To Sarah Brubaker, to the rest of the staff, to all of the volunteers, the chairs of the committees, and those who have taken on the task of moving this church forward. And for those right now who are out there considering about a gift that they may be able to make to help make the outreach center possible, I would say, please know that if you have any questions or you're looking for someone to shoot some ideas to just talk through some things, please know that we would be happy to do so. The only way we can do this is together. And just like in my house, I'm sure in your house, it's going to take some conversation and some budgeting and some thinking about how we might do this. I do believe in this project, and I want nothing more than to see it come to fruition. And I think this is different, because this one is not for us. This one is for the entire community. And I think it can make a difference, but we need your help to bring it home. With that said, let us close with a word of prayer. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this moment, for this gift, and for this congregation. We ask a special blessing upon all of those who have yet to be served by our outreach center. Help our faithfulness now increase their life then. Remind us of who we are and why we do this. Remind us of the gift that it is to be together in service to you and with your people. And in those moments where we have fear or trepidation, remind us that you are with us no matter what. Though we know not what a day may bring, we give thanks that we have this day in which to fully live. And with that said, we lift these prayers In Christ's name, amen. Thank you, friends. We close now our church conference and this report from the Better Together campaign. Blessings to you. Thank you for all you do. God bless.